Survive the night, Omega, the guard said, and if the forest does not want you either, maybe the moon never meant for you to belong anywhere. The words followed Emily Carter as hard hands shoved her through the outer gate of Moonridge Pack and into the frozen mud beyond it. She fell to her knees, her palms sinking into the wet earth, her thin gray dress clinging to her legs as the midnight wind cut through the fabric like ice. Behind her, the wooden gates groaned shut with a final, heartless sound. Iron locks slid into place. Then came the laughter, muffled by the thick wall, but still sharp enough to reach her. Emily stayed still for one breath, then another. She would not let them hear her cry. Not Madison Vale, who had smiled while accusing her. Not Luna Caroline, who had watched the pack turn against the poorest girl in the house. Not Alpha Grant, who had decided that one unwanted Omega was easier to throw away than one spoiled daughter was to discipline. Emily pressed one trembling hand against the small torn bag at her chest. Everything she owned was inside it, a comb with 2 missing teeth, a pair of worn socks, a faded ribbon that had belonged to her mother, and half a piece of bread she had been saving for morning. Morning. The word felt almost cruel now. The forest ahead stretched black and endless beneath the winter moon, pine trees rising like silent judges, their branches heavy with frost. Somewhere far off, an owl called. Somewhere closer, snow slipped from a branch and struck the ground with a soft thud that made her flinch. She had never been outside pack borders alone. No Omega went into the night without escort, without fire, without a cloak. That was not exile. That was a sentence wrapped in silence. Emily pushed herself upright, mud streaking her pale hands, her long honey-brown hair falling loose from its braid. Her knees shook. Her breath came out in small white clouds. But she turned back toward the gate anyway. For one foolish second, she hoped someone might open it. Someone might remember the years she had scrubbed floors, carried water, mended shirts, soothed crying children, and given away her own meals when the old ones were hungry. No one came. Only a voice from behind the wall called, "Keep walking, poor little burden." Emily closed her eyes. The insult should have broken something in her, but instead it settled quietly beside all the others. She had been called weak before. Useless. Unwanted. A shadow in a house full of wolves who measured worth by strength and noise. But shadow survived in places light was too proud to enter. She stepped away from the gate. One step. Then another. The mud pulled at her shoes, and the cold bit at her fingers, but she kept moving toward the trees because stopping meant letting them decide how her story ended. High above the road, on a ridge half hidden by black pines, a man in dark royal armor watched her vanish into the forest. His crimson cloak moved slowly in the wind behind him, rich and heavy against the snow. At his side, a sword rested beneath one gloved hand. His face was still, beautiful in a severe, unforgiving way, framed by long black hair that fell over the fur collar of his mantle. One of his guards leaned closer and whispered, "Your Majesty, should we bring her back?" King Adrian Blackwood did not answer at once. His eyes remained fixed on the small figure in gray walking alone beneath the moon, shoulders shaking, spine unbowed. Then he said quietly, "Not yet. I want to see what they do when they believe no king is watching." Emily had learned long ago that a pack could make a person disappear without ever sending them away. Before the gate, before the mud, before the cold road opening under the moon, she had already been a ghost inside Moonridge House. She rose before sunrise to carry laundry down 3 flights of back stairs, scrubbed soot from kitchen stones until her knuckles stung, and stood quietly beside banquet tables while stronger wolves laughed over food she had helped prepare but was never invited to share. No one asked if she was tired. No one asked if she had eaten. They only noticed her when something was missing, broken, spilled, or late. "Poor Emily Carter," they would say, as if pity could be sharpened into a blade without anyone calling it cruelty. Her parents had died when she was 12, leaving behind no land. No rank, no powerful relatives to speak for her. Her father had been a border scout. Her mother had mended clothes and taught Emily that kindness was not weakness, even when the world mistook it for surrender. After they were gone, Luna Caroline gave Emily a narrow cot beneath the servants' stairs and called it generosity. From that day on, every bowl she washed was treated like payment for her own existence. Yet Emily still found ways to be gentle. She slipped extra bread to old Mr. Harlan when his hands shook too badly to hold a spoon. She wrapped warm cloth around a child's sprained ankle after training. She calmed nervous horses with her voice, soft and steady, until even the stable master admitted the animals behaved better around her. But in Moonridge, gifts that did not roar were not considered gifts at all. Madison Vale made sure Emily never forgot that. The Luna's daughter was bright, polished, and admired, with golden dresses, perfect manners in public, and a smile that changed the moment no elder was watching. To Madison, Emily was useful only as someone to blame. If a goblet cracked, Emily had touched it. If a ribbon vanished, Emily had taken it. If Madison wanted laughter at dinner, she whispered something about the poor Omega in gray and waited for the room to follow. The night everything changed began with smoke. Emily had been carrying folded linens through the east corridor when the first alarm bell rang. She ran with the others toward the winter storehouse and saw orange light flickering behind the shutters. Wolves shouted, buckets passed from hand to hand, and frost turned to steam where water struck the burning wall. Emily was the one who noticed Madison near the side door, her pale blue cloak pulled tight, her face drained of color. At Madison's feet lay a dropped lantern. For 1 second, their eyes met. Emily saw fear there, raw and sudden. Then Madison screamed. It was her, she cried, pointing with a shaking hand. Emily was inside the storehouse. I saw her running out. The courtyard went silent in the terrible way crowds do when they have already chosen what they want to believe. Emily tried to speak, but Luna Caroline stepped forward, wrapped her arms around Madison, and looked at Emily with cold relief. Relief, not shock. As if the answer had arrived exactly where she needed it to land. By dawn, the story had hardened into truth. By dusk, Alpha Grant stood beneath the judgment torches and declared that Moonridge would not shelter a thief, a liar, or a danger to the pack. Emily listened to the sentence with numb hands and a hollow chest. She understood then that innocence meant nothing without someone powerful enough to defend it. And far beyond the circle of firelight, hidden where the pine shadows touched the stone wall, King Adrian Blackwood heard every word. By the time the judgment torches burned low, King Adrian Blackwood already knew Moonridge Pack was hiding more than a ruined storehouse. He had not come to their territory for ceremony, tribute, or welcome. He had come without banners, without music, without the golden announcement horns that usually made smaller packs kneel before his horse reached the gate. For 3 months, reports had crossed his desk in Blackwood Citadel, missing winter grain, altered tribute ledgers, border families going hungry while Moonridge House hosted polished dinners under crystal lamps. Adrian trusted numbers less than he trusted silence, and Moonridge had sent too much of both. So he arrived under a moonless sky with 6 royal guards, all dressed in dark traveling cloaks over their armor, and watched from the old pine ridge above the pack grounds. From there, he saw the courtyard, the storehouse, the judgment circle, and the girl in the gray dress standing alone beneath every accusing eye. At first, she was only one more detail in a long chain of corruption. Then she lifted her head. Adrian had seen warriors beg when power turned against them. He had seen alphas fold under pressure, councilmen lie with velvet voices, and noble heirs shake when their comfort was threatened. Emily Carter did none of that. Her hands trembled, yes. Her face was pale from cold and fear. But she did not point at others to save herself. She did not bargain. She did not collapse into the shape they expected from someone poor, powerless, and cornered. She stood as if dignity were the last coat left to her, and she would rather freeze than let them tear it away. Beside Adrian, Captain Rowan Mercer shifted quietly. The charge feels rehearsed, he murmured. Adrian's eyes remained on Luna Caroline, who held her daughter with one arm while speaking to Alpha Grant in low, controlled tones. Madison Vale kept glancing toward the east corridor, not the storehouse. Guilt had a direction. It always looked somewhere it wished no one else would look. It is rehearsed, Adrian said. His voice was calm, but the air around him seemed to tighten. Below, Alpha Grant raised his hand, and the courtyard fell silent. He spoke of order, danger, loyalty, and the cost of weakness. He spoke long enough to sound righteous and empty enough to reveal himself. Then he gave the order. No cloak. No food. No fire. The guards dragged the outer gate open, and Emily was pushed into the road beyond the wall. Rowan's hand went to his sword. Your Majesty. Adrian watched the gate close between the pack and the girl they had chosen to erase. A smaller king might have stormed the courtyard then, satisfied by a dramatic entrance and frightened faces. Adrian had learned that truth often ran when power arrived too early. He needed to see who followed the lie after the crowd dispersed. He needed to know whether Moonridge had merely abandoned an innocent girl or meant to bury the evidence with the night. Keep the horses back, he ordered. No one moves unless I say so. Below, Emily gathered herself from the mud and walked toward the forest, her gray dress almost disappearing in the dark. Adrian turned his horse along the ridge trail, keeping her in sight through the pines. The wind pulled at his crimson cloak. Frost gathered on the black metal of his gauntlet. Every instinct in him demanded that he bring her out of the cold immediately, but his eyes had shifted to the 3 Moonridge warriors slipping through the side gate far behind her. They carried no lanterns. They called no search party. They moved like men with instructions they did not want witnesses to hear. Adrian's expression hardened. There it is, he said quietly. Rowan looked from the warriors to the distant figure of Emily entering the trees. They are going after her. Adrian's hand settled on the hilt of the royal sword at his side. Then we follow. And this time, Moonridge will show us exactly what kind of pack it has become. The forest swallowed sound differently than the pack grounds did. Behind Moonridge walls, every whisper had teeth, every laugh knew where to land, every silence carried judgment. But beneath the black pines, the world spoke in colder, simpler things, whined through branches, frost cracking underfoot, the distant rush of a creek hidden somewhere below the ridge. Emily followed the narrow game trail because it was the only path she could see. Her shoes were not made for winter ground. Mud had soaked through the seams, and each step made her toes ache until they felt almost separate from her body. She held her torn bag against her chest with one arm and used the other to push branches away from her face. Needles caught in her honey-brown hair. Thorns tugged at the hem of her gray dress. More than once, she stumbled and caught herself against a tree, breathing hard, telling herself that falling was not the same as stopping. The cold wanted her to curl up. The darkness wanted her to believe the gate had been right to close. She would not give either of them the satisfaction. After nearly a mile, the trees opened into a shallow hollow where moonlight lay across the snow in pale strips. Emily paused, one hand pressed to her side, and listened. At first she thought the sound was only wind trapped beneath the roots. Then it came again, small and frightened, a thin whimper almost lost beneath the night. Every reasonable part of her told her to keep walking. She had no blanket, no fire, no safe place to sleep. Dawn was hours away, and the forest did not forgive wasted strength. But the sound came a third time, and something inside her answered before fear could stop it. Emily turned toward the hollow. Hello? Her voice shook in the dark. I am not going to hurt you. She found the little creature beneath a fallen cedar, half hidden where the roots twisted into the ground. It was a wolf pup, no larger than a farm dog, with silver-white fur dulled by mud and frost. One small leg was caught in an iron trap, the kind Moonridge used along the border to frighten off strays. The pup's amber eyes lifted to hers, bright with pain and terror, and Emily forgot her own cold for one clean, terrible second. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered, dropping to her knees. The trap had not closed fully, caught on a root before it could crush down all the way, but it held tight enough that the pup could not pull free. Emily set her bag aside and reached for the metal jaws. They were stiff, colder than river stone, and her finger slipped twice before she found the release bar. The pup flinched. I know, she breathed. I know. But you have to trust me just a little. She pressed down with both hands. The bar resisted. Her palms burned. Her arms shook. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the trap gave with a sharp snap that made her gasp, and the pup scrambled forward into her lap. Emily wrapped both arms around it before it could hurt itself trying to run. It trembled against her chest, its small heart racing beneath the dirty fur. She tore a strip from the bottom of her gray dress and wrapped it gently around the injured leg, tying the cloth with careful fingers the way her mother had once taught her. There, she whispered. That is not perfect, but it is better than being alone. The pup pressed its cold nose beneath her chin. Emily closed her eyes. She had been thrown away with nothing, yet here was something smaller than her, more frightened than her, still reaching for warmth as if warmth were a promise the world had not completely broken. She pulled the creature closer and tucked it inside the thin shelter of her arms. I know what it feels like, she murmured into its fur, to be left where no one is supposed to find you. High above the hollow, hidden between pine trunks and moonlit snow, King Adrian Blackwood watched the poor Omega bleed warmth into a creature she had no reason to save, and something in his guarded heart went utterly still. The first sound was not a growl. It was laughter, low and familiar, threading through the trees behind her like smoke. Emily went completely still, one hand resting over the shivering pup inside her arms. For one fragile moment, she hoped the night was playing tricks on her, shaping old fears into voices because fear knew exactly which faces to wear. Then a branch cracked beneath a boot, and 3 Moonridge warriors stepped into the hollow. Brock Hensley came first, broad-shouldered and smug beneath his dark patrol coat. Behind him moved Tyler Reed and Mason Cole, both younger, both wearing the same cruel confidence Emily had seen around Madison Vale for years. They carried no lanterns. Their faces were half-shadowed by the moon, and that frightened her more than if they had come openly. Search parties called names. Guards carried light. Men with honest reasons did not move through winter woods like secrets. Brock's eyes dropped to the bundle in her arms, and his mouth curved. Look at that, he said. Moonridge throws away one stray, and she finds another before midnight. Tyler laughed softly. Mason looked over his shoulder as if checking whether the forest itself might be listening. Emily rose slowly, keeping the pup close beneath the torn edge of her dress. Her legs felt weak from cold, but she forced them straight. It was caught in one of the border traps, she said. It needs warmth and a healer. It needs nothing from you, Brock answered. He stepped closer, and the pup tucked its nose against Emily's chest with a tiny, frightened sound. That creature does not belong here. Neither do I, according to all of you. Her voice was quiet, but it did not break. Brock's smile thinned. Careful. Exile does not make you brave. No, Emily thought. It only made the truth easier to see. She could see it now in the way Tyler would not meet her eyes, in the way Mason kept glancing at the bandage around the pup's leg, in the way Brock reached for the small silver whistle at his belt, the one used to call patrol dogs away from evidence trails. They had not followed her to make sure she stayed gone. They had followed because the pup mattered. Because it had seen something. Because Madison's dropped lantern and Luna Caroline's cold relief were tied to this trembling little body in Emily's arms. You knew it was here, she whispered. The 3 men went silent. The forest seemed to lean closer. Brock's expression hardened. Give it to me. Emily took one step back. Snow pressed against her heel. No, it was such a small word. One breath. One syllable. Yet it felt larger than anything she had ever said inside Moonridge walls. Brock stared at her as if the sound had come from the trees, not from the poor Omega in the ruined gray dress. Move, Emily. She shook her head. Her heart hammered so hard she felt it in her throat, but her arms tightened around the pup. It is hurt. It is a problem. It is a child. The words left her before she could soften them. Tyler shifted uneasily. Mason muttered, Brock, maybe we should just go back. Brock ignored him. Last chance. Emily thought of the gate closing. Of the laughter behind the wall. Of every day she had swallowed words until they turned into stones inside her chest. She thought of her mother's hands, warm and gentle, tying bandages exactly the way Emily had tied the strip of gray cloth around the pup's leg. Kindness is not weakness. It is the strength they cannot recognize. Emily lifted her chin. Then you will have to be disappointed. Brock moved forward. The pup whimpered. Emily did not run. She planted herself between the warriors and the little life she had chosen to protect, shaking so badly the moonlight trembled across her face. Above the hollow, hidden among the pines, Adrian Blackwood watched the moment settle into place. The lie, the pursuit, the witness, and the girl who had every reason to save herself but chose mercy instead. Captain Rowan's hand tightened near his sword. Your Majesty? Adrian's gaze had gone cold, but his voice was steady as winter stone. Now. The command did not come as a shout, but the forest obeyed it like thunder. Before Brock could take another step, a royal sword struck the snow between him and Emily, sinking upright into the frozen ground with a clear metallic ring. The sound cut through the hollow and left everything silent. Brock froze. Tyler stumbled back. Mason went pale so quickly he looked almost gray beneath the moonlight. Emily stared at the sword, unable to breathe. Its hilt was black and silver, carved with the crowned wolf of the northern throne. No border patrol carried a blade like that. No Moonridge warrior would dare touch one. Then the trees parted. King Adrian Blackwood stepped into the hollow as if the darkness itself had opened for him. Moonlight slid across his black royal armor, catching on bright metal edges, old scratches, and the polished plates along his broad shoulders. A heavy mantle of dark fur framed him against the winter night, and behind it, his deep crimson cloak moved slowly over the snow like a piece of sunset dragged into midnight. His long black hair shifted in the wind. His face was sharply beautiful, calm in a way that made his fury feel more dangerous, not less. Emily had seen powerful men before. Alpha Grant filled rooms with noise. Brock filled silence with threat. But this man did not need to fill anything. The forest made room for him. The air changed around him. Even the pup in Emily's arms stopped trembling for one startled second and lifted its head. Brock dropped to one knee so fast his coat swept snow aside. Tyler and Mason followed, heads bowed, voices breaking over each other. Your Majesty. Emily's heart turned over in her chest. Your Majesty. The words struck harder than the cold. The stranger on the ridge, the unseen presence following the trail, the man whose sword now stood between her and the pack that had thrown her away, was not a hunter or passing noble. He was Adrian Blackwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the ruler whose name was spoken at Moonridge in lowered voices, the king every Alpha feared disappointing. Adrian did not look at the kneeling warriors first. He looked at Emily. His gaze moved over her muddy dress, her bare hands red from cold, the torn hem wrapped around the pup's injured leg, and the way she held the small creature as if her own body were the last wall left in the world. Something unreadable crossed his face, not pity, not surprise, but recognition, deep and quiet. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that no one could mistake the control behind it. Step away from her. Brock swallowed. Your Majesty, we were only following pack orders. I did not ask whose. Cowardice you borrowed. Adrian walked forward and pulled his sword from the snow with one smooth motion. He did not raise it. He did not have to. I said step away. The three warriors moved back at once. Emily's knees nearly gave, but she forced herself to stay standing. She had been afraid for so long that safety did not arrive as comfort. It arrived as confusion, sharp and bright, almost painful. Adrian stopped an arm's length from her and removed one black glove. His hand was large, steady, marked by faint scars and the weight of a life spent ruling more than sitting still. He did not touch her without permission. He simply held the glove-free hand out, palm open, first to the pup, then to her. You are cold, he said. Such a simple sentence. No accusation. No command. No laughter hiding behind it. Emily looked at him, and the words she had been holding back all night finally broke loose in a whisper. I did not burn the storehouse. Adrian's eyes darkened. I know. Her breath caught. How? His gaze shifted past her to the kneeling men, then back to her face. Because guilty people chase witnesses into the woods. Innocent ones protect them. The pup stirred in her arms, pressing closer to Adrian's offered hand. A faint silver glow moved beneath its fur, subtle as moonlight under water. Brock saw it and lowered his head further, fear plain now. Adrian saw it too, and his expression changed at last. The royal stillness cracked just enough for astonishment to show through. Rowan, he called without looking away. Captain Rowan Mercer emerged from the trees with 2 royal guards behind him. Adrian's voice remained calm, but the hollow seemed to tighten around every word. Secure these men. They will answer at dawn before their pack. Then he unclasped the heavy fur mantle from his shoulders and stepped closer to Emily. May I? He asked. No one at Moonridge had asked her permission for anything that night. Emily nodded once, too stunned to speak. Adrian settled the warm mantle around her shoulders, careful not to disturb the pup. The weight of it nearly made her sob. Not because it was royal. Not because the fur held his warmth. But because for the first time, since the gate closed, someone had looked at her as if she was not a burden to be cast off, but a life worth sheltering. The pup's silver glow faded almost as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only a small, frightened creature tucked against Emily's chest. But Adrian had seen enough. So had the men from Moonridge. Their fear changed shape in the silence, turning from fear of a king into fear of what the king now knew. Captain Rowan bound their wrists with royal cord, not harshly, but firmly, while the 2 guards stood watch beneath the pines. Brock stared at the ground. Tyler's mouth moved as if he were rehearsing excuses he no longer trusted. Mason looked close to tears. Emily should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt hollow and cold inside the warmth of Adrian's mantle, as though her heart had not yet understood that the danger had passed. The pup shifted weakly, and she looked down at it, stroking one finger over the soft fur between its ears. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above the wind. Adrian's face softened by a fraction. A royal moonwolf. Emily's hand stilled. She had heard stories of them as a child, creatures said to travel with the old kings, rare as falling stars and loyal only to the crown. She had never believed they were real. This one is named Luma, Adrian continued. She vanished from our trail 2 nights ago while we were investigating the eastern border. We believed she had been frightened off by traps. His gaze moved to the iron jaws lying open near the roots. Now I am beginning to understand she was running from men who did not want her to reach me. Mason let out a small sound. Brock shot him a warning look, but Adrian heard it. Of course he heard it. A king like him seemed built from attention. Speak, Adrian said. One word. Quiet. Final. Mason's shoulders sank. We did not know she was royal at first. Brock hissed his name, but Rowan stepped between them. Mason swallowed hard and kept going. Madison saw it near the storehouse. The creature was in the east corridor when the fire started. It ran when the lantern fell. Luna Caroline said if anyone found it, the whole story would come apart. Emily felt the world tilt. Not because the truth surprised her, but because hearing it spoken aloud made the injustice suddenly solid. All evening, she had been fighting smoke with empty hands. Now the shape of the lie stood in front of her, wearing names. Madison. Caroline. Brock. Orders given in clean rooms by people who would sleep in warm beds while Emily froze outside the wall. Adrian turned his head slowly toward Brock. And Emily Carter? Brock's jaw worked. The Luna said the Omega had no one. That the pack would accept it. No one. The words landed harder than the cold ever had. Emily looked down before anyone could see what they did to her face. She had known she was alone, but there was pain in hearing others use loneliness as permission. The pup, Luma, pressed its nose to her wrist as if it understood. A faint warmth moved through the torn cloth around its leg. Adrian saw Emily's expression and something in his own became still again, but this time the stillness was not distant. It was protective, focused, dangerous in its restraint. A pack that measures innocence by social rank has forgotten the first law of the crown, he said. The strong exist to guard the vulnerable, not to spend them. No one answered. The wind carried snow dust through the hollow. Adrian crouched, lowering himself until he was closer to Emily's eye level. Even then, he seemed impossibly powerful, black armor and crimson cloth framed by moonlit trees. You protected Luma without knowing what she was, he said. You thought she was simply hurt. Emily nodded. That should have been enough. For the first time that night, Adrian's eyes warmed. It was. The words opened something fragile in her chest. Not rescue. Not romance. Something older and rarer. Being believed. Being seen before she had to prove she deserved it. Luma gave a soft whine and lifted her head toward the east, where the black trees thinned in the direction of Moonridge. Adrian followed the movement. She can show what she witnessed at dawn, he said. Moonwolves carry memory in moonlight. Before the full pack, the truth will answer for itself. Emily looked toward the path that led back to the gate. Her body remembered the mud, the shove, the laughter, the lock sliding shut. I do not want to go back, she whispered. Adrian stood, his crimson cloak gone from his shoulders because its warmth now covered hers. You are not going back as the girl they cast out, he said. You are returning under my protection. Then he looked at the three kneeling warriors. And they are returning as proof that the night had witnesses. The eastern sky was just beginning to pale when the royal party reached the road back to Moonridge. Dawn did not arrive all at once. It gathered slowly along the edges of the world, turning the snow from blue to silver, touching the pine branches with thin lines of gold. Emily rode in front of Captain Rowan on a steady gray horse because her legs had grown too weak for the long walk back. Adrian rode beside her on a black stallion, tall and silent in his armor, one hand resting near the reins, the other relaxed beside the sword at his hip. His fur mantle still covered Emily's shoulders. It was too large for her, heavy with warmth, and beneath it Luma slept against her chest, the little moonwolf's injured leg carefully wrapped in the strip torn from Emily's dress. Every few minutes, Emily looked down to make sure the pup was breathing. Every time, Luma's small body rose and fell, safe beneath her hands. Behind them, Brock, Tyler, and Mason walked under guard. They no longer looked like men sent to finish a secret task. They looked like men being carried toward the truth by a morning they could not stop. When Moonridge Gate appeared through the trees, Emily's breath caught. Her body remembered before her mind could reason with it. The mud outside the wall. The shove. The laughter. The lock sliding shut. She had told herself she would never see that gate again unless she was haunting it. Now she approached beneath the protection of the Alpha King, wrapped in royal warmth, with the very witness they had tried to hide resting against her heart. The guards at the wall spotted Adrian first. Confusion crossed their faces, then recognition, then panic. The gate opened so quickly the hinges cried out. Inside, Moonridge was waking to a morning it had not prepared for. Servants stopped carrying water. Children froze near the steps. Warriors came running half-dressed in patrol coats, only to stumble into bows when they saw the crowned wolf on Adrian's armor. Word spread faster than fire through dry grass. The Alpha King had come. The Alpha King had Emily Carter with him. By the time Adrian rode into the judgment courtyard, nearly the entire pack had gathered beneath the fading torch poles where Emily had been condemned only hours before. Alpha Grant emerged from the main hall with Luna Caroline at his side and Madison behind them in a pale blue morning dress, her hair arranged as if innocence could be combed into place. Grant's face lost color when he saw the royal guards and the 3 Moonridge warriors under cord. Caroline's eyes went first to Emily, then to the mantle around her shoulders, then to Luma sleeping in her arms. For one brief second, her polished expression cracked. Madison saw the moonwolf and took a step back. Adrian dismounted before anyone could speak. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. The courtyard became so quiet Emily could hear the creak of leather as Rowan helped her down from the horse. Her shoes touched the same stones where she had stood accused, but everything felt different now. The pack stared at her as if the grey dress, the muddy hem, and the bruised tiredness beneath her eyes had become evidence they were afraid to read. Alpha Grant bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, we were not informed of your arrival." Adrian looked at him. "That was the point." Grant swallowed. "If this concerns the Omega, we handled the matter according to pack law." "No," Adrian said. "You handled a lie according to convenience." A ripple moved through the crowd. Luna Caroline stepped forward with careful grace. "There has been a misunderstanding. Emily has always been troubled, and Madison was frightened. In the confusion of the fire, perhaps she believed she saw something she did not." Madison's eyes filled instantly with practiced tears. "I only wanted to protect the pack." Luma stirred. Emily felt the small body tense against her. The moonwolf lifted its head, amber eyes opening with a light no ordinary creature possessed. Adrian turned toward the pack. "Then let the witness answer." He nodded once. Emily knelt gently and set Luma on the stones. The pup wobbled but stood, silver-white fur beginning to glow beneath the first touch of sunrise. Light spread from its paws in a soft circle, then rose into the air like mist. The courtyard vanished inside a shimmer of moonlit memory. Everyone saw the east corridor. Madison near the storehouse door. The dropped lantern. The startled moonwolf. Caroline pulling Madison back, whispering fast, pointing toward the servants' stairs. They saw Emily arrive after the smoke had already begun. They saw Madison point. They saw the lie being born. When the light faded, no one moved. Madison covered her mouth. Caroline's composure collapsed into silence. Alpha Grant looked suddenly smaller than the title he wore. Emily stood with Adrian's mantle around her and Luma leaning against her ankle, and for the first time in her life, Moonridge had nothing cruel left to say. For several heartbeats, the courtyard held a silence so complete that even the morning birds seemed to wait beyond the walls. The moonlit memory had faded, but its truth remained on every face. Madison's tears had stopped. Luna Caroline stood rigid beside her, no longer polished, no longer untouchable, only pale and speechless beneath the eyes of the pack she had deceived. Alpha Grant tried to speak, but Adrian lifted one hand, and the attempt died before becoming a sound. "Moonridge pack will answer to the crown," Adrian said. His voice did not rise, yet it carried to every doorway, every window, every wolf gathered beneath the weakening torches. Not because a storehouse burned. Grain can be replaced. Not because a frightened daughter lied. Even fear can be confessed and forgiven when truth is chosen quickly enough. You will answer because you took the weakest person in your care, placed your guilt on her shoulders, and sent her into the cold believing no one important would notice. No one looked at Emily now the way they had before. Not with amusement. Not with contempt. Some lowered their eyes. Some looked ashamed. Some looked frightened by how easily they had joined the cruel side of a lie. Emily stood very still, Adrian's mantle wrapped around her, Luma pressed against her ankle like a small silver guardian. The warmth around her shoulders did not erase the night, but it kept the night from owning her. Adrian turned to Captain Rowan. "The Luna and her daughter will be escorted to the Royal Council for judgment. Alpha Grant will surrender temporary authority until Moonridge is reviewed." Rowan bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." A soft murmur moved through the crowd, but Adrian's gaze silenced it. Then, for the first time, he turned fully toward Emily. The hard command in his face changed, not into softness exactly, but into something careful, almost reverent. As if the entire courtyard had fallen away and only the girl in the ruined gray dress remained. Emily Carter, he said. Her name sounded different in his voice. Not a burden. Not an accusation. A name worthy of being heard. She swallowed, her fingers tightening in the edge of the mantle. Yes, Your Majesty. Adrian stepped closer. Last night, your pack counted your worth in rank, food, and bloodline. His eyes lowered briefly to her hands, scratched from the trap, reddened from cold, still gentle enough to stroke Luma's fur. The moon counted differently. Before Emily could ask what he meant, Luma lifted her head and gave a clear, bell-like cry. Dawn broke over the eastern wall in a spill of gold. Light touched Emily's wrist where the torn sleeve of her dress had slipped back, and beneath the pale skin, a mark appeared like silver fire under glass. A crescent woven through a crowned wolf. The courtyard gasped as one living thing. Emily stared at it, breath gone. She had seen mate marks only in old books and wedding ceremonies, never on her own skin, never glowing with such quiet certainty. Across from her, the same silver light appeared at Adrian's wrist, bright against the edge of his black gauntlet. For the first time since she had seen him, the Alpha King looked shaken. Not weak. Never weak. But humbled by something greater than power. He removed his gauntlet slowly and lowered to one knee before her on the very stones where Moonridge had condemned her. The pack froze. Emily's eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. She was too stunned, too full, too afraid that one breath might break the moment. Adrian lifted his bare hand, offering rather than claiming. They cast you into the night because they could not see your worth, he said, his voice low and steady. I watched until dawn, and the moon showed me my queen. The word moved through the courtyard like sunrise through fog. Queen. Not servant. Not stray. Not poor little burden. Emily looked at the man kneeling before her, this king of black armor and crimson cloth, this powerful wolf who had waited, witnessed, protected, and believed. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The mate mark warmed beneath their joined fingers, not burning, not forcing, only recognizing. Around them, one by one, the wolves of Moonridge lowered to their knees. Emily did not smile at their shame. She did not need to. Her victory was not in watching them fall. It was in realizing she no longer had to shrink to survive among them. Adrian rose, keeping her hand safely in his, and Luma brushed against Emily's skirt as if guiding her forward. The gate stood open behind them now, not as an ending, but as a passage. Beyond it, the forest glittered with morning frost, the same forest that had received her when no one else would. Emily looked once at the road, once at the pack, and then at the king beside her. The night had not destroyed her. It had carried her away from those who mistook gentleness for weakness and delivered her into the first dawn of a life where she would never again have to beg to belong.